And she said, oh, men, especially on the dating apps, are only looking for a body and someone who is blonde and blue-eyed. So this is a white person, okay?
Yeah.
And so that's their impression. And so it completely cuts males down, but it
Mm.
also cuts the masculine inside to shreds.
Hello and welcome to Share.care's What is Manly radio show and podcast. Men feel more lonely, lost, and not useful in society than ever in history. Males are not attaching to school, work, or women. What it means to be a man appears lost. Is there a framework for being manly that we can unearth?
Welcome to Share.care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Share.care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning Share.care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
Hello, Susan. How are you?
I am good, thank you. And how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. It's morning for me here, but it's although we're in winter and you're in Arizona, so you get summer all the time. You don't have winter. But
Well, we do, but it's not winter according to you. And we
no,
are different time zones and different hemispheres.
exactly. I'm actually about a meter and a half from a nice big fire that's sitting beside me here. Well, I'm sitting beside the fire, not the fire's near me, but so it's
Well, yes, it's about 90 here. So
oh yeah, I don't know what that translates to in Celsius. You guys keep
yeah,
your own system, miles, Celsius, Fahrenheit. What is this?
I don't know. I don't know.
Finding your
One,
own identity. Where does that fit within the Jungian philosophy? I'd like to know.
it actually does. It's a
Yeah.
process of being yourself. Is
Ah,
the identity to be yourself, not
yeah.
to be away from others, but to be yourself with others.
Ah, I love that. Yeah, that's awesome. And for the audience, who we have here, we have Dr. Susan E. Schwartz. Now, she's a Jungian analyst and a clinical psychologist who's a member of the International Association of Analytical Psychology. Now, she's taught numerous Jungian programs and presented workshops and lectures all around the world. She's the author of The Absent Father Effect on Daughters, Father Desire, Father Wounds, and she's got some other upcoming books that we're going to hear about soon too. That's a little teaser. And Susan runs her own private practice in Paradise Valley in Arizona, the USA. And Paradise Valley sounds so beautiful. I haven't been to the USA, but I'm so looking forward to coming to Paradise Valley one day. It'd be awesome.
Well, the foliage is quite different. Let me just, certainly from where you are, but let me just add the two different books
Hmm.
that in addition, because they might fit with
Yeah.
what we are going to talk about today. The one coming out in September, also from Routledge, is The Imposter Syndrome and the
Mm,
Acid Personality in
yeah.
Jungian Psychology. And the
Right.
one next year, also with Routledge, is called Girl Revisited, and it is about the
Mm,
archetype of the young female in all of us, men,
yeah.
women, and however anybody identifies. So,
Wow.
yeah, so our topic today,
Mm,
although um, uh, we're talking in relation to men, women, but also what the characters are inside of us.
yeah, I'm really fascinated to have these conversations because Jungian is very popular out there amongst a number of people when I'm listening to them, and so I'd love to explore that more. And that's where we're coming to our topic of what is manly, and we're looking at the world and And from what I've seen, and there's a lot in the news about men being more lost, lonely, and not feeling useful in society, which I find really interesting how we've got to that. What have you seen in your area of the world and your dealing with people in your practice? What have you seen in that space as far as men experiencing being lost, lonely, and not feeling useful?
I think you're right. A lot of the men that I have seen will say they don't know what to say to other men because
Oh.
they might not be interested in sports. They might be interested in emotion, in the inner world, and they don't really know how to put that forward with other men. And quite sadly, what I've heard from women
Mm.
is I am always having an argument with them because there are quite a few women who are disparaging about men. Oh, too superficial. They only look for someone just now, just today. They
Mm.
all this general to man,
Mm.
stereotypically awful, will say, and this is someone who really wants to be with someone who is emotional. And she said, oh, men, especially on the dating apps, are only looking for a body and someone who is blonde and blue-eyed. So this is a white person, okay? And
Yeah.
so that's their impression. And so it completely cuts males down, but it
Mm.
also cuts the masculine inside to shreds.
Because I've read a lot about and seen that a lot, and I know from my experience that we did with one of the organisations I was with here, the Family Peace Foundation. I was the CEO of that, and we did a what we got together was we brought people in from a big, oh, it's not big, from strong families. We knew that they had strong, stable families. We didn't bring in couples, just one person. We had a dinner party and we had two prominent psychologists asking questions, and the aim was to film this and get the answers so we could then use that as media to share around with people going, here, if you experience this problem, here's a way of dealing with it. Coming from a corporate background and I was directing it, I noticed that a lot of the men were starting to do the talking. So I was getting concerned. I was going, oh no, coming the corporate background, we always men get in trouble for dominating the conversation in meetings and stuff like that. So I was getting really worried. So I went to the women off camera because we had more people than we had tables at the dining table. And I said, look, I'm getting really worried about the men doing all the talking and that might be dominating the conversation. They all stood up and went, no, we never hear men talking about this stuff. We're loving listening. And I was that was an eye opener for me going, oh, maybe if there's a safe space. And then I've heard that so much from so many people around the world saying, yeah, a look can cut a guy down where he will start talking, you give him a look and he'll just shut up. Is that, from just,
Yeah.
is that something that you've experienced or noticed? It sounds like that was connecting to what you were saying just before about, women saying, oh, men are just this, and all of a sudden we can't say anything.
Yes, because we all get raised
Mm.
sociologically in
Mm.
some kind of a system which slots all of us into very narrow categories.
Mm.
And then we
Yeah.
can't really breathe. We're supposed to fit this way, this way, this way,
Mm.
by age, ethnicity, religion, and all of them, I would agree with you, are short-circuiting the masculine and the feminine
Mm.
because we actually are in the midst of such a time of change and
Mm.
fluidity that we're all challenged to make ourselves into who we really feel that we are, not
Mm.
how we were restricted, but who we feel we are. It was interesting, your discussion. The
Mm.
women said, I want to hear from the men, but what they wanted to hear was an interaction as well,
Mm.
and a conversation and a relatedness and feelings.
Yeah.
Okay, how many men, you're male, how many men get raised to not express their feelings? I hear stories of men all the time. When
Mm.
I was 6, I
Mm.
was told, you better not show those tears.
Mm.
You better not. Or the girls, the daughters would see the father, usually the father, beating up the boys.
Mm.
So the boys are, they get told verbally and non-verbally, don't
Mm,
show who you are. You're supposed to be a little soldier or something. I
yeah.
hope this is changing.
So, yeah,
I
and that's
hope.
why, because I was fascinated by that, because from my experience when my growing up, my mum was the authoritarian. My dad, I don't think my dad ever yelled at me ever. I can't recall anything. And also too, then I went on to join the army. I was in the SAS, which is Australia's Special Forces, and all the guys there. So these guys are tough, really, really tough. It's like your Navy SEALs in America, or your Green Berets, whatever.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's like this is the best of the best. All,
yes.
all those guys could ask questions, ask for help when they needed to. They could express their feelings. But and for the long time listeners, you've heard this before. But one of the guys that I was close to on the base, you wouldn't know it. He wasn't a big, Arnold Schwarzenegger type guy. He was slender, but he was extremely lethal as an operative. Um, his hobby was sewing. He took in my pants when I lost weight. He literally took in my pants. So that's where I go for me. But then I didn't realize until I was having these conversations, because we had to do a psychological test before we went there. My guess is, I don't remember what was on the psychological test, but my guess was there's a certain profile where people were checked for that, where they had that underpinning where they could talk about that. So because you can't do that job, the emotional pressure of doing that job, and the things that you have to do, and to deal with that, you need to ask for help. You need to be able to deal with emotions. And so everyone could. There's no problem, people giving each other a hug, that kind of thing. And so it was kind of a biased situation where I think it was set up. I'm saying it was set up, but it was in a situation where I was around people that could do that. So now that I've been looking at it going, oh, wow, there's a whole bunch of people that don't have that experience.
Yes, and couldn't you imagine how
Mm,
wonderful it would be if that kind of an experience was in people's homes as they grew
yeah.
up and in school? Because you are right. If you keep the stress inside and
Mm,
don't talk about it, then your body starts to fall apart. And
mm,
you keep too much back and
mm.
you're not free. You walk around
Yeah,
like a prison or a
yeah.
straitjacket, and you're not able to be spontaneous, and you're only allowed a
Mm,
narrow band of emotions. I'll tell you that what I have thought, and why I actually wrote the first book about the
mm,
fathers absent, is so many people that I see, women and men, but I was focusing on the women,
mm,
would say, my father he didn't have much to say. He
mm,
didn't talk to me. He was in his own world, or he usually left after about 3 or so, and
mm.
very little contact with his children. And they desired always
Yeah.
to be with that father. And the longing to have a related
Mhm.
father, a related figure, somebody who could do what you did when you were in
Yeah.
the SAS, but they didn't have that,
I
and then they
wonder.
had to compensate.
Yeah, so because I was wondering from that perspective, I have a friend, um, and he's married and he's got 3 daughters. Now, I would say in the conversations there, and based on what I know, the conversations we've had, he falls into that category, and go with me on this, of that category of not having much to say, but he listens a lot. So like, and he told the story of one of his daughters said she heard a bear in the backyard. Now, we don't have bears in Australia. There is no, unless it escaped from a circus. And he didn't
Right.
say, oh, there's no bear there. He goes, oh, really? Tell me about what you heard. Now, she did a lot of the talking. He did a lot of the listening. And so he's taken on that role of going, okay, he's actually created that relationship with his wife and his 3 daughters, where he's not the biggest talker in the family, but he does a lot of the listening and a lot of
Which is
facilitating the conversation.
Yeah, which is great. So this is quite interesting. Someone a while ago, a man,
Mm,
wrote me an email and
mm,
said, I am the father of 3 daughters.
yeah.
It's an interesting
Okay.
synchronicity. I'm the father of 3 daughters, and I want very much to change this heritage that
Mm,
I have because no one talked to me about my feelings, and I
mm.
want to change it with my daughter. He described himself as the poster boy of the absent father, but
Oh.
you have the awareness. I want to do it differently. Your friend
Mm,
might have an awareness. I want to do it differently. I
mm.
would say that the daughters also need his listening, but they also need his reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's
they
what he
do.
gives them, yeah, because he's paying attention. He's not talking a lot.
Yeah, but that's
The
what I'm
reaction's
saying.
different. The reaction is different from this talking, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he's doing not badly, but I would say the daughters will need his verbal self because otherwise what they will get is
Mm,
a listener and they'll just pick up on his unconscious.
mm.
Why is he not saying? Why is he not saying? It'd be interesting to ask him, how come you don't talk? How
Well,
come?
that's what I wonder about that because I look at that from that perspective, even from my own perspective. I have a business partner who's a woman, and she will do most of the talking. It's not that I won't talk; I do talk. I just don't have to say I don't have as much to say about it. I don't need
Oh,
to talk about it as much, and
you're
that's where I
well
wonder because we have that when
answered.
we talk about, because I was reading and watching about a marriage counseling, and there's a guy called Mark Gungor who's from America, and he was talking about that. He has a program called Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage, and he was talking from the perspective. He goes, when you ask a woman to describe her ideal man, most of the time she'll describe another woman, not what a man is. And it's like they're wanting a man to react the same way as a woman. I mean, and I look at that from how I was brought up. My mum was said very strong, but she was very much of she would always say men and women are different. We both have strengths. By coming together, we actually become more. How much of it is, wanting um, men to be women?
Or how much is it women wanting, is it the opposite? Women to be men, but also so that equally is there. But also then we are faced with another thing, which
Right.
is how do we as individuals access whatever masculine and feminine are
Mm.
within ourselves in
Yeah.
a in an unusual, unique way to us. That masculine
Mm.
and feminine is a spectrum.
Yes.
And so, where do you want to live on the spectrum? So, I'm a little surprised that you would say you don't talk very much because you have a huge amount of feeling space that you share. I mean, as we began this,
Mm.
you completely shared it. And so, and for me, it's very interesting. Of course, that's what I do all day.
Yeah.
But of seeing how people live out their masculine and feminine sides.
Yeah. Well, because it's
And
interesting, and maybe it's a relative thing where you're interpreting what I'm saying is not talking much, is that I don't have much to say. I love, when I was growing up, Clint Eastwood was um, one of the actors that I liked. I liked his movies. Um,
yes,
but I reading his biographies, it was interesting. He was different from a lot of other actors. Normally, an actor, you'll give, some script and they'll try and get as much screen time as possible. Apparently, what Clint Eastwood would do is he was given a paragraph of dialogue. He'd reduce it to a sentence. If he was given a sentence, he would try and get it to a few words or to an expression, because he was able to condense that meaning into something that was much more powerful because it was in a more condensed format. It's kind of like a laser beam that has more power than a flashlight, and there was a lot of talk about that. So from that perspective, it becomes of our, are we talking a lot or are we saying something? And that's where, from my perspective, I try and say what I need to say in as a condensed form as I can, but I also try and get as much information as I can. So when I'm saying I'm not talking a lot, it's not because I don't have anything to say. It's I'm trying to gather as much information as possible and then condense what I'm doing in return.
and I would say that's certainly a fine way of interacting, but I also think that there are a lot of details
Mm.
that you have to add to and Clint Eastwood's an interesting example
Yeah.
because he wasn't exactly, noted for verbosity at
No,
all. No,
exactly.
no, no. Yeah, but it's an old, in a way, I'd ask the question, is that an old male characteristic that
Mm.
actually wants to be upgraded to our times where we want to really understand somebody? So for me,
Mm.
when someone is terse and has
Mhm.
condensed there, I always have more questions. So I
Mm.
will say, well, could you tell me this? Because it widens the
Mm.
perspective. And I think even the point of what is manly, it
Yeah.
really is, how do we expand whatever that is? How do we make
Mm.
it full? How do we relate and get out of, because there's a lot of stereotypes, well, around everybody, but certainly around men. I would agree with you. For
So
generations,
where do boundaries fit in with that? Because when we go, you're having conversation with someone and someone says they want to know more, but what if you don't want to share more? You don't, do you have to? Is it an obligation? If you go, well, okay, actually, this is my boundary.
yes. Well, when somebody says, I don't want to share, I will say, well, of course, because of what I do, I will, of course, say, why not? So I'm an example. But also, even with friends or outside of my work, I will say, yeah, okay. Do you want to say why not? And do you want to say when you want to share it?
Mm.
I'm curious. I'm curious. I want to respect you.
Mm.
But I also want to know you. I want to know you. So when you feel like it, tell me. I'm here. Because I want to know who you are
Mm.
inside.
Because from that perspective, and I wonder how that is, and because I look at my stepdaughters, for example, they went to a very high end school, and they'd really structured the learning around how women and girls learn. Most of the tables were set up; they were round tables in the classroom, so they could facilitate more conversation.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was really interesting from that perspective, and I think it's almost cliche now that if you read a book on relationships, it's about how the women need more of that connection. The conversation is more about connecting than it is about sharing information. It's more about that emotional connection. That's what is a common theme within the relationship books, whereas men are not so much that way. And I look at that, for example, my relationship with my father. We have an amazing relationship. I think we'll see each other. We don't see each other all the time. We don't talk all the time. We don't need to. We both know we have this amazing relationship. When we do catch up, we can have a conversation about anything. There's no anything we want to have a conversation about. Doesn't mean we need to have that conversation to have a connection, but we don't need to talk about. I cannot talk to my dad for months, and then we catch up, and it's like we give each other a big hug. We are connected, and it's a different way of operating. But from a stereotypical woman perspective, they couldn't operate that way. They wouldn't feel that connection. Whereas even now, I'm sitting. My dad's 100 kilometers away. I feel a connection to him, even though we're not talking.
Yes, but you see, you can feel it because we're talking about men and we're
Mm.
talking about your father a bit. But
Mm.
I would say, I would really question your demarcation of, and
Mm.
I think it's interesting, your demarcation of what
Mm.
men need, what women need.
Mm.
Partially, I do wonder if we are not raised in a certain way to need certain things and to not need certain things. It's
Mm.
interesting how many little girls, whether they want it or not, get
Mm.
shoved a doll. A lot of those little girls, they don't want to wear that dress. They want
Mm.
to wear those pants and they want to wear those jeans and give me the cowboy boots. And I can't tell you the amount of stories of the
Yeah.
little girls, they're 5. I wanted those red cowboy boots and they wouldn't let me have them and they've never forgotten it. And the cowboy boots
Mm.
represented something to them that they don't want to wear that dress. They don't
Yeah.
know. That's not my idea of female. So I think what we are in is
Mm.
breaking the old ways. How many generations of men, how many of our fathers back
Yeah.
did they ever learn to relate? Did anyone encourage them to talk about how they felt, what their love was for you, how they would express it? Some of them wouldn't even hug like you and your father do. They
I
shake hands.
yeah.
Horrible.
Well, yeah, well, that's what I wonder about that, and I hear what you're saying, because there is that conversation about, oh, do men and women behave that way because that's how they were taught to behave? And from my experience, again, I'm going to reference my mum here. When I was young, she actually, dressed me up in girls' clothes. My grandfather hit the roof, but and when I was growing up, I had a sister who was a year younger than me.
Yeah.
When she was, because girls develop quicker, she was taller than me for a point in time, and I was really upset about that. But but that changed very quickly. She's now a little short us. But with but when we were growing up, there wasn't that demarcation for us. When we played, I played dolls with her. Yeah, so this is what I'm wondering, because I wonder, and my life is very different from that, and from that analogy. And we go, well, but I have absolutely no interest in playing with dolls now as I've grown up. But as a kid, it didn't, was no biggie. And we used to push prams around together. We used to have pram races as well. So we had had these little prams and make little track, and we'd race around with them, that kind of stuff. So for me growing up, there wasn't that demarcation of this is a boy's behavior, this is a girl's behavior. We just did that. But then as I got older, it just morphed into this is the kind of stuff that I do, which is more in line with, what we say men are taught to do. But it was just what became, when I became true to who I am, that's what it became.
Well, yeah, it very well might be true
Yeah.
to who you are, but
Yeah.
it could also be the peer pressure in school of the little kids who identify
Mm,
male and the little ones that identify female, but what about the ones that are back and forth? So we don't have
yeah.
answers right now, but I do think the freedom to express, set up very early, like you
Mm,
did,
mm,
leave a huge spectrum of masculine and feminine so
mm,
that you're free inside to wear or play or whatever. And the freedom
mm.
allows you to be able to say, okay, this is what I
Yeah.
am choosing, not out of the peer pressure. We are all under peer pressure now, even.
Mm.
Do we really listen to that or do we listen to ourselves?
So that's the
And
interesting point. And I love that from that perspective, and it's fascinating because I have friends who are like, a lot of people look at me and go, I'm an alpha male, and I'm like, what is that? I mean, because I don't get that relationship. It's like I'm Damien Andrews. That's how I see it. Um, and it's interesting when you talk about that peer pressure side of things because um, when I was growing up, I grew up in a small country town, we have AFL football here, which is kind of like your gridiron, but a lot faster. And we don't have to wear padding. So I'm just having a dig there.
that's fine. I don't watch it, so that's all right. Yeah.
I'm having a stir. I'm Australian. I can get away with it.
You can
We
do
don't have the
whatever. It's your
PC
show.
filter that you guys have. But from that perspective, um, that was in the small country towns. That was there. There was football and netball. They were the sports. Now, I played a little bit when I was a kid, but very quickly I stopped. Even in primary school, I didn't play it. I wasn't part of that clique. And a little secret, AFL is probably one of the biggest sports certainly for boys and men. I've never been to an AFL game in my entire life, ever.
Okay.
And and I look at that and go, when you talk about, again, yes, there's a peer pressure. And I'm just wondering from that perspective, because I have friends who would fit very much on the effeminate side of things, and they're very comfortable with that. And
Of
we
course.
get along, extremely well. And just wondering how we encourage people rather than going, oh, this is how you should behave. You should talk more, or you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't do that. It's like, what works for you? Should we be having more conversations about that?
I think that that's the conversation.
Yeah.
What works for you? And being able to be comfortable with, I don't know. I don't know. I'm
Mm.
experimenting. I'm experimenting.
Yeah.
Like also, I've always I've seen a lot of men
Mm.
who this might sound off, but I don't think it is, who actually like to cross-dress. And
Mm.
the reason they like to
I've dressed
cross
in women's clothes before as an adult.
exactly.
That's how I know I
So
don't like it because it just doesn't work. They're uncomfortable for
they're
me.
uncomfortable. But there's a different material sometimes,
Yeah,
or
maybe I got the wrong clothes.
maybe a little yeah, I might try other ones, or maybe a little different style. I'm
Yeah,
serious.
yeah.
But what they're after is accessing something feminine within
Mm.
themselves. They're doing it
Mm.
externally, but okay, they need to. They need to. And
Mm.
me, I think, well, go ahead. Find your place. Find
Yeah.
who you are. Just like you said, listen to yourself.
Yeah, because I
Find
think it's what you're talking about there. And I love this conversation where we're talking about men experiencing the feminine side. Because one of the things I wonder about is, with the emotion side of things, people are, men particularly, and not just men, but women are as well. Especially in a corporate environment, don't express emotions, that kind of thing. It's a weak thing.
yeah, it's
And I
just enough.
wonder, and I look at it from a man perspective, and I wonder because emotions are very powerful. I remember when I was learning singing. Don't ask me to sing; I'm not great, but I'll annoy people sometimes when I feel like it. But when I was first starting learning to sing, my singing teacher said to me, said, "Just be mindful. When you're doing this, sometimes what generally happens is because if you're doing it well, you'll access a whole different area of your body, and you'll find you might just start crying for no reason whatsoever because you're accessing all these different emotions," which happened,
Just,
and that did. So, but what I'm wondering with that, because I think I was fairly lucky having the upbringing I had where I got to experience those things and that was okay. So when I had that, it was like, oh yeah, okay, that's there. But for someone that hasn't had that, has had repressed emotions the whole time, and then to suddenly feel that, that's got to be overwhelming. And
it's
and then wanting to push it back down again. Oh, I can't deal with that. Is that?
well, yeah, but you know what happens, I think, is that something will happen in their lives
Mm,
and they will then go into therapy or analysis. And
yeah.
the other thing that will happen is they will have different characters in their dreams. They will have
Mm,
different male figures, different female figures, because
mm,
they're changing. And
mm,
so what they didn't get, sadly, early, you can
mm,
get later. You can get later. You can
mm,
access the freedom to be yourself later in life. Doesn't make a
mm,
difference how old you are. You can
yeah.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah. But from that perspective, if you haven't had that experience with emotions, and all of a sudden that people saying, "Oh, you got to express emotions," you start to feel that, and you go, "I don't know how to deal with that." Is there enough guidance out there to guide people through what are this? Because you don't. It's like having all of this information. The emotions are power, and being sensitive is really, really empowering. We'll get to that in a minute, but um,
Yes.
for someone that has not had that experience at all, or been repressed it, to suddenly go, "Oh, you should express emotions," and then they start to feel that and go, "Hang on a minute, whoa." Is it? I mean, there's a process. Is there a better process for how to work your way into that?
Well, so to me,
Mm,
I would, of course, say you go into therapy or analysis to
mm,
learn about yourself. Learning about yourself means being able to express your feelings
mm,
and knowing that you feel. What is
mm,
interesting about your example of the music and the singing,
mm,
singing and music is very feeling. It just
mm. It
inherently
is,
is
yeah.
feeling. And yeah, and in dreams, it
Mm,
represents feeling. So
mm.
there's something about that. But I
Okay.
think that as people start talking about
Mm,
themselves, and they start honoring their
mm,
feelings, the little feelings,
mm,
they automatically learn to express it because it's part of nature. So the
mm.
emotional world is natural. The repression is not natural.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is accessing the natural self
Mm,
and pulling away the unnatural overpinnings. And
mm.
you are it comes, I'll use it again, it comes naturally.
Yeah, well, I think that, and that's what I know, from my perspective anyway, I look at that and go, well, it is natural. And when you combine the two, which is where I want to go to with this as well, because I work a lot of in my consulting firm, we work with high-end corporates, and I have a number of programs to help them be more profitable, basically. And one of those is a negotiation program. But the most powerful negotiators are ones that operate from a combination of feminine and masculine. They have the empathy, which is a feminine trait generally, to be able to listen, to be able to understand, stereotypically.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll say stereotypical.
Stereotypically.
Okay.
I mean, this way, and I know where you're coming from, and I agree with you. We have both inside us. But
Yes.
stereotypically, it's a feminine trait to be more listening and open. Whereas, it's a more masculine trait, stereotypically, to be more assertive. And so, but you combine those as a negotiator, you become extremely powerful, because not only are you receptive to what's going on, what the other person needs, but you also can stay fixed on what is right for you. You can keep those boundaries there and go, okay, this is where we're at, and you also have that power to walk away if it's not right, and that's okay. And that's where, and I use that as an analogy, but I think that applies generally in life, which I think that's your philosophy from what I've heard, is that you have feminine and masculine inside you. Embracing both gives you much more power to get things done. Was I hearing correctly before?
And it gives, yes, and I would say it gives you more energy to live a fuller life.
Yeah.
And you will take care of yourself better as well. One of the things about manly is, do you think that, I'm going to ask you because you're male, I could ask myself as well because I have male qualities also. But the whole story about men taking care of themselves, because that's an emotional place as well. Taking care, I mean, really being mindful of how they feel, what their body is saying to them, how they will use their body, how they exercise, how they sleep. I mean, this in a very physical, connected to the psychological way. A man really, or that male part, really knowing to listen inside.
For me personally, it falls into that category of intelligence. If you're not looking after yourself, you're not caring about yourself, that's not very intelligent. And I think, being intelligent, and it's a female trait as well, but being intelligent is certainly, that's what part of a man is, being recognizing that you are intelligent. Use your intelligence not only to take care of yourself, but to take care of others.
Yes, well, let me argue a little bit with you there,
You sure?
because I think that the mind is, and its intelligence is also owned by the feminine and women and however we access it. So our intelligence actually would say that we have the wisdom to, again, access the spectrum of masculine to feminine and feminine to masculine, and how we use it.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
And then that's the point, for the men. We were talking about men being lost and lonely out there. It's like, you are intelligent, guys. Women are
Sure.
intelligent too. But
Yes, but the lost and lonely man,
yeah.
all he really needs to do is go to whomever he wants, or he feels simpatico, or an attraction, and present himself. He's also lost and lonely because he's not using all of who he is.
Yeah.
That's what the absence is. Lost, lonely, absent. I have all these personality pieces. I don't know what to do, but I'm going to want to talk with you. I want to express myself with you. I would like you to know me. I want to know you. So it's a reaching out from the lost place to find connection.
So that reaching out, what is it, do you think, that has stopped men from reaching out now? What's caused them to want to shrink back and hide in their basement and play video games? I'm being facetious there, but
No, I think you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Even though women play video games too, I think it's higher percentage of males, no matter what age. I think that they get away with it. I think quite early in life, they're on playing their video games. No one's expecting that little boy or that teenage one or whoever to be able to relate. That's what I meant. I said it kind of
Mm,
earlier. Through the generations, there was a rotten expectation that the males do not relate, that it is the mother who carries everything about relating, etc., and the fathers don't. So the fathers, way past generations,
mm,
maybe they did, but in our current, since the Industrial Revolution,
mm,
they don't relate. They go out to work,
mm.
or they're busy,
Oh,
or no one expects it. So they learn to play their video games. And
interesting.
then they don't know how to talk. It's still in there, but they don't know how, they're confused. All
Mhm.
they need to do is say, I'm confused. I don't really know what to do. Can you help me? I'd like to
Mm,
relate. I think they've gotten lost a long time ago. I think they're becoming more found, but
mm,
it's not too prominent. And I would just say as well that the amount of people that I've spoken to, professionals,
mm,
analysts, therapists, etc., they hardly ask about the father because
mm,
the client, no matter who they are, has very little to say. So if
mm,
there very little to say about that male role model,
mm,
what are they going to say about themselves? See,
mm.
we learned it unconsciously. No expectation. It's very sad.
So how does that, from that perspective, is it a case where, from a role model perspective, there needs to be more of a role model saying, "Hey, you need to get out there," or is it more a kick up the butt and get out there, or just, is it?
I
Because
think,
I wonder about the participation trophy element that that is created. Fortunately, from my son, his school doesn't have that. It's very much there is scoring, and we will score. And it becomes about that drive to want to. It's about the
yes,
sport, and there's a lot of encouragement to be better. So
yeah.
if you lose, it's not, if you lose, that's not you're a bad person because you lost. It's okay, there's a
It's,
result. How can we improve from that?
yeah. And how can we accept that the loss might have some value?
Mm,
Because you lose
yeah,
at this,
yeah.
maybe it means you need to do something else.
Mm,
And that place of that so much achievement was put on males,
mm,
was
mm.
probably still is, but that their value was only in what they achieved, not in who they are. And the value is
Yeah,
in who you are.
yeah.
So, like with your son, if he loses at the game, his value is that he played and he tried and he did it. And
Mm,
maybe, in fact, he cries and he's upset. Then he's got you to
mm.
be able to say, hey, tell me what's going on. I'm going to share. I'm going to be there with you. I want to know you.
That's where I wonder, from that side of things, do we need to be encouraging people to separate who they are from their behaviors? And, from my perspective, I had an experience a long time ago when some of my behaviors probably weren't the best in the way of dealing with situations. I was at a wedding, a friend's wedding, and I was helping out, and there was a spot for the bridal car to pull up. Now, it wasn't marked, and someone pulled up and parked there. So I've stormed over and go, "What the hell are you parking here for? Arr, where's the bride going to go?" Now, they weren't to know. And now when I look at that, I go, that's probably not the best way of dealing with that situation. But I'm not looking at it going, I'm a bad person for doing that. My intention was to look after the bride. Now, my way of communicating that could do with improvement. And I just
Exactly.
wonder, is that, from that perspective, we need to separate that and encourage people who you are, like yourself for who you are, like yourself, not because of your behaviors, but just because you are a being that exists.
True. That seems to be a very difficult thing for people to not be critical, to be appreciative of themselves, to have
Mm,
had really good backgrounds that are solid and where they can learn. I'm good. I'm good. Okay, I messed up over here, but I actually am good. And that they can continue and go on to whatever next they want to do. I think people get, and this, I wonder, I think it happens with women, but I think men as well. If there is a failure,
Mm,
it becomes really an against themselves,
mm.
their image, too much identified with
That's what I
the world.
wonder about. What is what
Yeah,
because you mentioned about it's difficult to learn that this separation between, hey, you are a being, you're a ball of light, you exist. That's amazing. I mean, if you want to count it as a race, you're out of the million of sperm, you were the first. You won that race.
that's the one. But you see, so many people along the way
Mm,
do not get appreciated for you won the race. You're okay. No matter
mm,
if you win the race or not, you're still here. We
mm.
love you because you're here. Many people do not get that. I think you got it. I see a lot of people that didn't and can access it through working on themselves, through honoring their inner world, and through listening to who they are. I mean, you can really get it because it
Well, that's
doesn't
what I'm
go.
wondering about where it's because I don't know where that shift happened for me. I don't remember. I know I didn't grow up thinking that way, and I certainly was fairly hard on myself and beating myself up a lot. Um, and I don't remember what happened. I do know that basically it was a shift. I decided, and maybe that was it. I just decided I'm going to think differently. And
Yeah,
now, I think I'm freaking awesome. And I don't do everything great, but I learn from it and do it better next time.
yeah,
But
yeah.
that's behavior. Me,
Well,
I think as a person, I think I'm a wonderful being, and I try and share that with as many people as I can.
I would add on to what you said about behavior. That
Yeah.
is having a sense of self.
Mm,
And if you could define Jungian psychology in any way,
mm,
it's accessing your sense of self.
mm,
Because the self is exactly what you said. It is you exist and you are valuable because you exist.
mm.
And the self is bigger because it's conscious, unconscious, the
Yeah,
whole ball of wax. And so therefore, if you access that, you're getting into who you really are.
yeah,
Is powerful and can be accessed. And some people, just like you, something clicks and they go and they get on a different path, and
yeah.
boy, do they feel great. Some people don't click. Some people
What does
click.
it make that enables that click to happen? That's what I'm curious. Because if we can is that the secret sauce that we need to, the 7 and 12 whatever herbs and spices?
I'm not sure there are spices to it, but there is something also about what is inside of a person and how they access their
Mm,
gold. Let me put it that way. How
yeah,
they access the gold of who they are, or the
mm,
silver, or the jewels of who
yeah,
they are, who you meet in your life, who you encounter. Some people have
mm,
want a very difficult time, bad
mm,
luck. It's hard.
yeah,
Other people do not. The
mm,
point is how you use your energy. If I would say one thing when you said about the lost and lonely males,
mm,
their their energy for life is being sacrificed, and they want to be able to come out and not be lost and lonely, but use their energy
yeah.
for growth, development, relationship, love, self, and other.
And that's what I wonder, how do we encourage that to happen more? Because when you look at it, I know from my own experience and other people that I've worked with, that when you put that energy out there, it becomes a whole different thing. I remember there was a Christmas function I was at, and one of the guys there, he was there with his wife, and we're sitting at the table, and there's dancing going on, things like that. He had never danced with his wife, which I don't get because women love guys that can dance. If you want to, guys, learn to dance. They appreciate that. But we were talking, and for whatever reason, we were having the discussion. I was talking about, look, she really likes it, and you could tell from the wife was going, yeah, she would have really liked that. And don't remember exactly all the details we talked about, but it was kind of encouraging. And then later on in the night, and we talk about how, and it was also putting it in there, if she likes it, and if she likes it, she might be in the mood more, and all that kind of thing. We're going, and so. And so I was out on the dance floor late in the night, and then I saw them. They were up on the dance floor dancing, and he was out there, never danced before. He was kind of giving it a go, but he was there with his wife, and we kind of went over there, and I said, yeah, and he goes, yeah, and I said to her, so he could hear, I said, is he going to get rewarded when he gets home? And she said, oh, he's so getting rewarded when we get home. And it was like, was that, but I mean, from that perspective of putting things out, just experiencing that, I mean, I could see he had opened up a whole different gamut. I know there was a bit of, innuendo and that sexual motivation, that appreciation that helped along the way, but it's, experiencing that fullness of life.
Yes, well, I would add on to that that I think your encouragement
Mhm.
to him to dance
Yeah,
uh, helped him be able to dance
yeah.
because we don't know whoever had encouraged him to get
Mhm.
to dance.
Yeah,
So
maybe no one had. Yeah.
yeah, that's my thought. The
Mm.
other thing is that when you said about the sexual innuendo,
Mm.
I actually think that what you might have been saying was the two of you aren't close enough together.
Mm.
Way for the two of you to get closer, and
Yeah.
you're not using all of the opportunities that you both have for intimacy and love. So here's
Mm.
a good opportunity. Pick it up, run with it, because you're
Mm.
going to feel better together. You
Yeah.
both want to be closer than you have been.
Mm.
That's what you were saying. I'm reinterpreting it, but I think that that's
Sounds
part
about
of,
right. Yeah, I
yeah,
think, I mean, there was, I mean, and you could see the difference when they're up there dancing. You could actually see there was a more of a closeness. And
of
I'm no
course.
doubt he, even though, he might have been the stereotypical male that pushed down motion, but you could see it on the dance floor, whether he acknowledged it or not. There was more of an openness when he was up on the dance floor with his wife than there was when they were sitting down at the table.
Exactly. But you see, I also think
Mm.
that men need encouragement. We all
Mm.
need encouragement to be able to be free. Come on, go for it. And what a lovely thing that you were able to do that with him.
And that's
It's
why I
very,
wonder from that perspective, and it really, Wayne Dyer was a big inspiration in my life,
Mhm.
and I wonder from that perspective because he talked about, you know, the focus on and when, what you focus on it manifests in your life, and
Does.
so yeah, so and I'm just wondering, we talk about and it's very rare, but I had a really lovely conversation with a lady in India recently, on a business podcast that I run. I have a business podcast called Growing Revenue and Profit, and we were talking about that. But I was fascinated because the entire time we were talking, when we were ever talking about something, she was 100% solution focused. It was never a problem. It was just like, here's how we do it. And it was always moving forward. And I wonder from this perspective if we're sitting there going, and of course, if it bleeds, it leads. So that's, how press sells things. Um, but it's always about the problem. Do we need to have more conversations about, for example, my friends in the SAS here, tough guys expressing
Yeah.
emotions, not there's a problem, this is a lead. You can have this opportunity. Do we need to be shifting the focus that way?
I think what you're saying, I agree. I think what you're saying is looking at people's strengths and
Mm.
also, right, and also looking at the beauty of life and what is their joy,
Mm.
happiness. I don't mean that superficially. I mean what is really deeply wanted.
Mm.
Oftentimes, I will ask people, what are you really after in life?
Mm.
A lot of people don't know, not out of solve the problem,
Yeah.
but this is not just a superficial question.
Mm.
This is deeply fulfillment of yourself.
Mm.
And it causes people to value
Mm.
themselves, not problem solve, value themselves, their spirit, their
Mm.
well, their inner world. It's different than the problem solver woman that you spoke to.
Well, that was, and I wonder about that because you say, "What do you want in your life?" And when a lot of people don't know. And I switched the question because you'd ask people, "What do you want?" And they'd go, "Yeah, no." And so I changed the question and said, "What do you choose?" And a lot of people, I saw a light bulb going off, going, "What I choose? I've got a choice."
Of
Um,
course.
Yeah, well, that's what the question is, because I just wonder, have we, as much as we have so much opportunity out there, have we actually woken up and realized we have that opportunity, that we actually can choose?
Well, if we go back to
Mm.
what is a man and what is
Mm,
a woman, and with no flexibility, then
mm,
we have no choice then.
mm.
If we are open
Yeah.
to whatever these definitions mean, we are really faced with a lot of choices,
Mm,
opportunities, growth, development, and we don't have to listen to somebody who says you can't do it.
mm.
Oh, yes, I can. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, part of, again, separating that out? Because I look at it, I have a program about building confidence as well, and I separate it out because a lot of times people go, "Oh, I can't do that. I'm not good at that. I'm not a good speller," or whatever it is. And as you said, that's I am already labeling that. And I separate it out into, there's experience. You take Michael Jordan. The reason he can throw baskets the way he can is because he's done it so many times. That's
Exactly.
experience. But then
Uh-huh.
again, then you have what I call confidence. Um, and the way I define that is, when you were a baby, everyone was, and learning
Yes,
to walk, you
yes.
you and people study this. Apparently, babies on average try and fail 8,000 times before they learn to walk.
I'm
So that
not surprised. Yeah.
And so I put that in that's confidence, is in, I don't know if I'm gonna succeed or not, but I'm gonna give it a go. Might fall over, might get back up, but I'm gonna give it a go. And then you have self-esteem, and self-esteem is that category we were talking about before, where you realize you're this big ball of energy and, a wonderful being that exists regardless of how you behave.
Yes, but you see, the baby
Mm.
has not yet probably gotten rejected, has not yet gotten turned away from, has not, right?
Mm.
It hasn't happened 12,000 times. So the
Yeah.
baby is doing what is natural. It is natural to try to get up and walk. Equally,
Mm.
it is natural to be your entire self.
Mm.
Actually unnatural to say, I can't be me.
Yeah.
It's going against who we are born to be. We're born to be ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's where they did a study, and I can't remember where it is or the name of it, but they studied what they wanted to find out. They had Steven Spielberg and Donald Trump was in there, and a whole bunch of, this was before he was president. It was a long time ago. They just did this study, but they took all these people that were super super successful across a variety of different fields, and they wanted to find out, was there a common factor that they all had. Um, and they went through all these different variables and they didn't line up. And I think they got to 280 or something. And then they found one. And what it
What?
was at a very young age, before the child was 5. And it usually was the parent of the opposite sex, but not always. That parent had an unwavering belief in the child's ability. So if the child had said, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be an actor, whatever, the parent said, you'll be the best actor, you'll be the best astronaut, whatever it was. It was an unwavering belief in the child's ability, because it wasn't about whether that child was going to be an astronaut, an actor, or whatever. It was about whether it was about the encouragement and their belief in their ability. And when they had that belief in their ability, they could overcome whatever to get whatever it is they wanted. And that was what you're talking about, that ability we have that innately. Rather than repressing it, they were encouraging the child to keep getting up and keep trying to walk.
Exactly. And that totally makes sense. And
Mm.
it shows you the value of early life and early child
Mm.
development. But on the other hand, we could also turn it around and
Yeah.
say, that did not happen. Is it possible that the child gets another mentor or another
Mm.
encourager later in life?
Yeah.
It's possible. It's possible. Or they have an inside something
Mm.
spirit we're born with, that no matter what, because there are lots of stories of people who come from abject nothing and
Mm.
are amazing, amazing. So
Yeah.
we have, anyway, it's almost like a little chip we
Mm.
have inside. Some people, you could say, have got a bigger one and some people don't. So
Mm.
again, we've got the range, but that's very interesting that we all need an encourager.
Well,
along-
and from that perspective, because I know when I was growing up, that was certainly from my perspective, I was very negative in my self-talk. And I don't like using negative and positive, but people relate to that. Um, I steal from Shakespeare, who wrote, in Hamlet, scene 2, act 2, nothing's good or bad, thinking makes it so. So thinking events are just events and they can serve you. Every event can serve you. Just I'm lazy, so I like to do things quickly. And if I don't have to work through what is the negative to get to the positive and just go, this is an event, how can I use it? It's much faster. But from that perspective, I know I went through that process of learning that self talk, and now when and it came about. I was when I was in Perth. I was living in Perth when I was in the SAS. A girlfriend I had lived up north, and it was a beautiful drive up the coast, but lots of traffic lights. And obviously, I'm going to see my girlfriend. I'm very excited because I want to go and see her. And every red light I get is like really frustrating. So I'm going, oh, I'm getting all the red lights. But being anally retentive, I decided one day it clicked and said, am I getting all the red lights? So I kept a notepad next to me and I ticked off if I get a red or a green light. Turned out I was getting so many more green lights, but it didn't have the emotional intensity because I wasn't being stopped. And I
But you,
wonder, when we do that, do we actually overinflame the things that are getting in our way and because it's got more emotion attached to it, and that becomes our focus rather than all the good things that are happening?
it becomes a focus because of our habit and
Mm,
also what we are told
yeah.
by our families, by society,
Mm,
and we then forget to look at the entire world because it's
mm.
not just red lights in your example, it's actually a lot of green. And
Yeah.
so it's something inside to be able to look at the opportunities and go with them. The men that are lost and lonely,
Mm,
some of them might feel too much at the red light, and
mm.
they realize there is a green light right in
Lots
front
of
of them.
them. Yeah.
Lots of them. And that's kind of the value of you gave the guy, your friend of the dance,
Mm.
you gave him a green light. You
Yeah.
said, "This is a green light. Go for it. There's no red light here." And thank goodness he listened.
Well,
It's real shift
yeah.
inside
Mm.
um, how you view yourself.
Because I was wondering, is it really that simple? Because I look at it from my life, that was my shift. Whereas I
Mm.
went, I noticed, okay, I'm focusing on all the things that at the end of the day, I would go, oh, I haven't done this, I haven't done that, and I'd feel bad. And you produced, was it cortisol or whatever makes you feel bad? Yeah,
So,
yeah. And so I I made a conscious shift. I said, actually, what did I do today? And I went, I did this and I did that. And so I celebrated that immediately. As soon as I said that, I started producing dopamine. I would imagine serotonin. So I felt good. And it became, and then I made a conscious effort to go, okay, I want to feel good. So I did this, and then it became a habit. Then it became unconscious where I don't even have to think about it now. I'm constantly going, I've done this, and I've achieved this. I have amazing days every day because
however,
I'm focusing on the good stuff that, well, I don't like good, but I'm focusing on the things that make me feel good.
however, something happened. We use you as an example.
Mm,
Something happened along the way that
yeah,
allow you to be able the SAS, your training there.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a piece. There's
Mm,
something about all you could look at all the different parts of your life that would allow you
mm.
to stop at the red light and go, wait a second, how am I really living? And go on to
Mm,
green. But a
yeah,
lot of people get stuck at the red light and
yeah,
and they need help to find the green. And
mm,
that's what inner work does,
yeah,
or looking at your own psychology, how you can go from what has stopped you in life
mm.
to learn how you can find the green lights. They're all over the place, and you know that.
Yeah, exactly, and that's where I wonder from that perspective, because I think from what I've seen, change happens in an instant. It's the preparation to change that is where the effort needs to be.
And it takes longer.
Yeah.
People say, oh, this just happened. No, it didn't just happen. It's been building for a long time, and now it has coalesced, and
Well,
now
that's
you
where I
feel
wonder if change happens in an instant, can we condense that time? Because I mean, I think I've created this statement, but it's real in walls in real life exist, but in barriers in your mind are there because you choose them to be there.
they do, but sometimes it's not choice. Sometimes things
Mhm.
occur because it's the right time. You're not prepared, even though you might want to be. You're not prepared at this point in your life. But
Yeah,
that doesn't mean you won't be prepared at another time. So it's not just I'm going to decide to change this to this. There's a process involved, and it happens at the right time. And when you know it's going to happen at the right time, it's like a green light.
because
You know it's going to.
yeah, I wonder, can you choose that though? Because and I'll use the example of procrastination, because I don't think procrastination exists. I think, and I'll use the example. I was, we've all been, well, maybe not all, but a lot of people have binge watched, especially with streaming now. You can binge watch all these series all together, and I was doing that because and I enjoyed the series, and I had some other things that I wanted to do as well, and I was paying attention to my thoughts and going, hang on a minute. I'm focusing. I know I've got this to do, but my primary thought is I want to enjoy this show. And then I changed and said, well, actually, I want to do this work. I want to get this project finished because that's now important to me. And as soon as I made that shift, it became really, really uncomfortable to sit and watch another episode.
Of course.
But that
But
was
you
a
see,
choice.
yeah, but you see, I would say that you needed to watch those episodes and the energy built inside that
Yeah.
was saying, no, no, not no. It was saying, here's the yes. This
Mm,
is the different use and better use of your energy. So
mm,
the show watching prepared you to shift. I don't know that people can be that like this about things,
okay.
but you use the time
Mm.
and will shift to something else. You're
'Cause,
also describing confidence.
well, and we've got that whole program I mentioned before called Fearless, where we deal with that. But from
Yeah.
that perspective, what I wonder about that, and I'm still fleshing this out, is that, where now I've got to the point where I go, okay, if I'm very clear about where it is I'm going,
Hmm.
that makes so many other things not an option.
That's true. There is when you take a path, the
Mm,
other paths don't happen. It's like you say
yeah.
goodbye to them. But the path you take takes all the energy from the other paths,
Mm,
and you use that energy to keep you going on the path
mm.
that you want to take. It's
And
it's a
that,
shift in energy.
yeah, and that's the point I was getting to, is if we actually just simply focus on, this is the direction I'm going, make that your shift. And we talked about that before with, with that focus on, you know, um, well, yeah, that focus on the direction. It's the
Hmm.
same if you say, oh, I don't want to forget something, you'll forget it because that's your focus is on forgetting, not on remembering. I
Or
always teach people, it's like, if you
uh,
do that, you want to remember something, say, I want to remember. Your mind works that way.
yeah, the mind is it does work that way.
Mm,
I agree with you. I would also add, if you want something,
yeah.
see what you dream about. See what your inside
Mm,
world is telling you. And you will see where the obstacles are and where your go signals are. So
yeah.
look inside, see, dream about it, journal about it. So you take all the energy from the paths that you're not taking
Mm,
and move it to the path where you want to take.
yeah.
So I'm just going to add one other thing,
I
which
have a
is
sorry, go
Mhm.
ahead.
I was just going to say, the thing I would just add is that the men who are sad and lonely and
Mm,
lost, if they focus on that and they make an intention and
mm,
they really deeply look at their dreams, look at what's going on, and take that energy into really making an intention of,
Mm,
I want to be found. I
mm,
want brightness in my life.
yeah,
I want to be connected.
yeah.
Something will happen. It will.
I think that's a great way of summing that up because we've talked for a while now, and I was going to end with, what is your key takeaway? But I think you've just given the key takeaway there. That's fabulous.
Get
So
it.
it has been so wonderful talking with you today. It's so much there to explore and expand. I've had so much fun, and there's so much learning there, I think, for everybody listening. Thank you very much for taking the time.
And thank you for being so open and having such an interesting repartee. It's really been a delight. Thank you.
Thank you for being part of the Share.care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes, for others and for you.